Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today is a wonderful young lady that I had the pleasure of meeting earlier this year. She is a speaker and she is passionate about empowering, encouraging, and uplifting women in particular with her story and just positioning herself to pour into as many lives as she possibly can, letting people know that through her story and through their story, that nothing is impossible to overcome. The chaos, the challenges, the difficulties of life, it doesn't have to be the end of that journey. You can make it through, you can persevere, you can overcome. She's taken some time out of her busy schedule to be with us today, and I'm so thankful that she's done so, to share a little bit about her journey and drop some nuggets on us so that we can be inspired and encouraged as well. So without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Miss Kim Young. Kim, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hi, Robert. Thanks a bunch. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we jump in to our segments for the show, I do want to, of course, give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, just a little snippet, where you're from, what you do. Give the audience a little taste of who Kim Young is.
Yes. Probably my favorite part. So my name is Kim Young, and I am actually a mom before anything else. I'm a mom of three daughters, a 21-year-old, 16, and soon to be 13 next week. And so for me, motherhood just pretty much took up all of my life because, of course, that's kind of what happens. I also, by day, I work at a bank in compliance and operational risk. By night, I am a speaker and an empowerment coach and all the things to everyone, if that makes sense. My background is I did grow up in Jamaica as a child. I was born in Florida, but raised in Jamaica. So my cultural background is definitely Jamaican, and I do consider myself Jamaican. So a lot of my things, the way how I am is definitely tied to that. So
Awesome. I
yeah.
love that. And you just in the first few moments, you shared a few things about you that I didn't know. So that is beautiful. Great. But we're going to dig a little bit further, though, so don't worry about that, audience. We're going to find a lot more out about Kim. I'm certain that she's going to bless us this evening with some wonderful stories and just experiences that she's been through that's going to, again, be of encouragement to all of us. So with that said, I'm a firm believer that when it comes to our life journeys, our stories, if you will, you can't really tell the story without starting from the beginning. And, in order to really get the substance of, where this journey all began. And so we're going to do that this evening with you. And so what I would like for you to do, if you would, take us back to your childhood days. When you think back to that upbringing and what that life was like for you, if you would, please share with us exactly, what was that experience for you? Fond memories that you have, as well as if there was any specific challenges that you may have had to deal with in your upbringing. Please feel free to share that as well.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I was born in Florida but raised in Jamaica. And so from a very young age, I was very, I guess, privileged to see a lot have the opportunity to do a lot of things in Jamaica, right? I would also say that I was blessed with great family. As they said, really takes a village to raise a kid. And so my brothers and I, we were pretty blessed that we had tons of people around us, a lot of my mom's family, to basically make sure that we were going to be great and doing good growing up. My fond memories would just be my aunts taking us out. Friday evening, they would take us out to do things. Saturdays, we would go ahead and also do things as well after they were done cleaning the whole house. If you're Jamaican, you get it. And so for the most part, it was just a lot of family time. It was a lot of just time with my dad as well, and those are things that pretty much stick with me. Where we can laugh about even the things that I got in trouble for as a kid, because I was pretty mischievous. But even the things that I got in trouble for as a kid, it's funny how I can laugh with my aunts now about it.
Wow. That's awesome, man. And I'm just thinking, here we are talking to someone who grew up in Jamaica, and of course, being in the States, you think of Jamaica, you automatically are thinking, vacation spot, getaway. And I'm just wondering, like, I'm just out of curiosity, how would you compare life in Jamaica in comparison to how the tourists who come in perceive Jamaica? Do you think that they have a misunderstanding about really what it is? Was it kind of funny to see people come in and just maybe the things that they were amazed at? You're like, why are they making a big deal out of that? And then on the flip side, maybe things that they downplayed, and you're like, they're missing the whole essence of what Jamaica is.
Yeah, so I will tell you that for the most part, definitely. But when you go in as a tourist, and I can't speak for all Jamaicans, everybody's going to have their own perspective, right? But when you go in as a tourist, it's almost like you're there just to visit. You're going to like the best areas. You're not seeing like behind the scenes the things that really go down. You're not seeing people that may not have an interior bathroom but only an exterior bathroom. You're not seeing the houses that are maybe made out of zinc and that are not made with like, four walls of wood or whatever the case may be. You're not seeing all of that, right? You're not seeing how they burn the trash because there really isn't a landfill. There's a landfill there now, but like you're burning trash, like the things and the things that I saw growing up. And on the flip side, I get here and it's like I think the biggest thing that people take for granted is education, because in Jamaica you pay for your education, right? You
Mm.
pay to go to school. But here it's like everything, like the education is free, and it's almost like withered away. Like it's not as sacred. It's almost like, I gotta go to school, so what? But in Jamaica, it's a big deal for you to have your knowledge, for you to be able to even afford to go to school, because not everybody can afford to go to school, um, and that's it's a big deal. So I think there are quite a few things that are very different coming
Hmm.
from the tourist perspective versus actually living there, right?
Wow. And so when you're talking about paying for school, you're not just per se saying to pay for college education. You're talking
No,
about elementary,
yes,
middle school, high school. You paying for all of that,
you're
and,
paying
and
for it.
and not necessarily because you're going to a private school or anything. It's just school costs. Period.
School,
Wherever
correct,
you go. So there's not really a true. Oh, I go to public school, so that's free. Or I go to.
correct.
Okay, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. And then another thing that kind of comes to mind real quick before we move on, since we're talking about your home in Jamaica, I'm assuming do you still have a lot of family that remains there to this
I
day,
do. So
or okay?
on my dad's side, I have a lot of family. On my mom's side, a lot of them have migrated here because, again,
Hmm.
in Jamaica, it's like, oh, you're moving to the states. That means that you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna get ahead, and you're going to, there's it's the land of opportunity. So it's a big
Hmm.
deal to talk about you're moving to foreign, which is foreign, right?
Right.
But it's a big deal when you say that.
Hmm.
So for the most part, my dad's side of the family, there's still a lot of them there because sometimes they really don't want to move to the states because of the things that happen here.
Hmm.
We'll talk about the mass shootings. We'll talk about just the government and the politics, and it's corrupt down there too. But I think lifestyle and things down there can be a little bit easier than what's here too. So
And it's interesting that you mentioned that because when you take the layer of the tourist part of it off of it, and you think about places like Jamaica and other Caribbean like areas, a lot of times, again, depending upon the media source, it's portrayed like as if it's this, underdeveloped, deprived, you know, whether it's lack of education, lack of resources, and while some of that is in existence, just like it here is in the United
yeah,
States, again, I think sometimes as a country, as great and as powerful as the United States is, there are sometimes I think that sometimes as a country we kind of feel ourselves a little bit and perhaps think that we're better than other places, and these other people from other places are like, yeah, you may have this, that, and the other, but don't get it twisted. We don't have some of the crazy stuff that
correct.
you Americans are dealing with every day, and so while you're so quick to maybe turn your nose up at us or think that we're less than you, you know, um, you might want to look in the mirror at yourselves and some of the nonsense and the mayhem, if you will, that at times, as you already know, that goes on day to day here in the United States. So I just thought that was interesting. But one thing in particular that came to mind, I know when we went, my family and I went on a cruise right before Christmas, and as we were visiting different islands, I know one of the common conversations that came up was the impact that COVID had, and I was
Hmm.
just curious, how did that, from your understanding, how did that impact Jamaica and perhaps people in your family that were there?
So for the most part, from what I can recall, it impacted the tourism.
Hmm.
Tourism is number one for Jamaica. It's a big deal, right? That's really bread and butter right there. There's other things too, but that's the main thing. Clearly, it was closed, nobody in. That means that people can't work. That means that there's and again, that's the moneymaker. That means that
Hmm.
hotels are closing. That means that, our hotels can't pay people to, it was just a lot. So for the
Yeah.
most part, um, that was a huge deal because nobody's making money because there's no tourists coming in. And then
Right.
eventually, I guess they realized, hey, you have to go ahead and we have to let people in order to go ahead and to get the tourism industry
Hmm.
going because we need it. Then they only blocked off a certain portion of Jamaica where you can use. They call it the North Corridor, right? You block off the North Corridor, and then you had to go through tests and just all the things to go ahead and to make sure that they were safe and people were still getting. And even till this day, they're actually. I was looking at Jamaica News a couple of days ago. They're actually still very much on top of their numbers. They're still researching, still looking at their numbers, still making sure that it's nothing crazy going on because we know that COVID is on the rise. And so for the most part, they're still like very active and very diligent in what they're doing.
Got it, got it. And that was kind of some of the story that I was hearing. It was really, like I said, it's interesting. Here we were in the States, although we knew that there were some financial issues, obviously people losing their jobs, getting laid off and things like that.
Right.
To go to, like I said, to go to various islands and things of that nature, I was hearing those same stories about, the tourism was a killer because that was the main, like you said, the main source of income for many people. And so to not have it was really devastating for a lot of people. So, and here we were thinking, worried about getting sick, and these people like, hey, I'm worried about like being able to pay bills and eat, and and stuff like that. So, different, people get impacted different ways from such a major, basically generational, illness that we know of as COVID. So, I was just curious to see if Jamaica was pretty much in line, or if there was something different with that. So,
No, they're still in
yeah,
line.
wow, wow, okay. So, again, first off, thank you, of course, for sharing that, kind of giving us that introduction to your journey, to your story. But, I'm sure in life, you live long enough as you experience different things. There comes some moments in time where you're faced with a series of challenges, and some of those challenges, again, depend upon your endurance, your creativity. You can navigate your way through those things, but every now and then, and I think this applies to everybody, every now and then you get hit with something that's a little bit different. It's a little bit heavier, maybe to the degree that you actually are questioning. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. This is a bit much for me. I don't have the easy answer that I may normally am able to quick to get, or it's not something I can just throw some money at and make go away, or a phone call that I can make and it just disappears. This is something that I'm really pressed on. It's kind of getting me down, perhaps in some type of way, mentally, emotionally, or what have you. So my question to you is, tell me about a time when you were faced with this type of challenge that you were doubting if you were going to be able to get through it. You were questioning, you were concerned, you were worried. You didn't know which way to go, which way to turn. What was that experience like for you? And what was that ultimate moment in that experience where you finally felt like, okay, I'm having that breakthrough where I'm beginning to come up out from up under this situation?
Yeah. So automatically the one that comes to mind is the one that I like to call my breaking point because for me, and full disclosure, I was a hot mess express. I was a hot mess express as when I was younger, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I recall this one particular day. There was no food in my house. There was an eviction notice on my door. I was a mom to three daughters. I was not working. And it was horrible. I was battling depression because I wasn't able to find a job, a steady job. There wasn't transportation to necessarily, get around, and things were rough. I mean, sending my daughters to school just to have a meal because there was nothing really at home, relying on people to go ahead and to assist, living off of the government, you name it, and that was me. And this one particular night, I remember crying and praying to God. And I remember saying, God, this ain't it. I know without a shadow of a doubt you have more for me. I know. I already know. I still believe it. I already know. And that night, I went ahead and I made my plan. But whatever downloaded into my spirit that night, I made that plan and I worked that plan. And this was just a plan to help me get some income coming in, get some food in my house, right? Get some get just be able to go ahead and to live without fear, if that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not knowing what's coming, fear and anxiety, not knowing what's coming. It was a lot, um, and it's like the more I worked my way out of it, and the more I was getting on a path that I believe that God knew that I needed, right? And that's why I always tell people action cures everything. You ever start
Mm.
to feel depressed, you ever start to feel sad, you ever start to think anything, right? You think you're not on the right path, you think you're not. Let's get some action. Action cures everything. ACE is what I like to say. Um, and I remember it took me months to get to where I was at. And even then, I still wasn't even at breathing room, but I felt better. And I slowly felt like the anxiety, the fear dissipating. And I just felt so much relief because I
Mm.
knew that there was a light at the end of that tunnel.
Wow. Wow. Um, of course, first off, I do want to acknowledge the fact that I appreciate your transparency and sharing that. I'm sure as many times as you probably shared that story, it's never an easy one to tell because of the the constraints, the pressures of it all that you were dealing with at that time, and then like you said, the responsibility of being a mother of three girls and just trying to make it from day to day. Um, and I agree with you. Sometimes well, I'm not even gonna say sometimes, oftentimes, when God finds, he feels like as if we are not as close to him as we need to be. Like you started off saying, I was a hot mess express. And, we can all interpret what that meant. But clearly, when I think about you saying I was a hot mess express, clearly it's an issue of, my priorities weren't right. I was all over the place. I just didn't have a game plan. I'm just out here. I'm just living. I'm just existing, so to speak, with no true plan, no true focus, no true direction. And I think we all, at some point in life, kind of drift into that moment. But I think what was special though with in regards to God and how He moves is that when He's wanting to build that relationship with you, and He finds you drifting off like that, He will actually use those moments and just let the whole situation blow up, if it will.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, get me down to that rock bottom. I'm broken moment. I got nothing left. And it's not so much a punishment or a means to make you suffer. It's more of a surrendering moment, that isolation moment where maybe if I let you get so far without taking you out, but get you down so far to where you finally say, I need help. You talked
Mm-hmm.
about action. And oftentimes the biggest action that a person can take, they're thinking something really big and over the top when all the action really needs to be is help.
Yeah.
I I don't know how I got here. It didn't happen overnight, but I'm here and I have nowhere to go, nowhere to turn. Something's got to give. It's either going to be you helping me or I'm out. My family's out. Um, Help. And just to know that that's all you had to say. God didn't make you beg him and plead. He didn't make you do something that would be embarrassing or insulting or humiliating. He just said, I've been here all this time while you were struggling. I've always been here. But you've never, in all the you trying to figure it out on your own, you just doing you never did the one thing that was right in front of you, that action move that you talked about, which was just say help.
Yes.
And then, as you said, when you asked for help, when you made it clear, I know that this is not, this just can't be. I just don't, you're just not that kind of God that you just going to let this all just go down like this. There's got to be more. Help. And then, as you said, and this is just, you're not telling people, you're not telling people something that you heard. You're telling people something that you know. And only until you have that kind of experience with God, people on the outside looking in who don't know what that feels like, we're trying to share with you that this is a real thing. This is not something make believe or fantasize. God will He will speak to you. He will pour into you in a way that you connect and understand. And whatever it was, like you said, that He put in you, He didn't even give you specific details per se at the time. He just said, stop having your little pity party moment. Move.
Right.
Just move. Take a couple of steps, and I will begin that
Yes.
momentum. And as you said, it took me months just to even get my head a little bit above water. It took me months just to get to that point. But because you moved, because you made an intentional decision to say, I'm just not going to go down like this. Not like, at least not without a fight. I'm going to fight because you were. It didn't sound like you were fighting up to that point. You were
Right.
just again just dealing with it, but not necessarily fighting for yourself, fighting for your kids. But
Right.
you said, you know what, I'm gonna fight,
Right.
and that's all God wanted to. He just wanted you to step up and say, I'm gonna do something. And but even in that, he was like, you don't even have to do as much as you think you're going, because I'm gonna get ready to open up some doors for you. I'm gonna ready to open up some windows of opportunity for you. So whether it's getting some solid employment, whether it's getting the resources that you need, getting the support that you need, I'm going to just open those windows. You just keep on moving forward. Take whatever it is that you have already, resource wise, that you come with, put that fight forward, and I'll fill in those gaps. I'll fill in those holes. Don't even worry about it. Don't even worry about how it's going to happen. Just know that it's going to happen. And I can tell just from the snippet of the stories that you just shared that you did just that. And he just allowed that thing to manifest and manifest and manifest. And I think the other thing that we want to take away from just what you shared in your story here, with this monumental challenge that you had, is that, I continue to remind people as well as myself that while it might have not felt good in the moment that you were in, it was necessary. You needed to go through that because your going through it positions you to be who you are today,
Now.
right now. How do you pour into women, or anybody for that matter, to tell them about overcoming challenges and chaos and stressful moments and anxiety moments? How do you really authentically tell them that if you've never been through what that feels like?
Correct.
But see, when you've been there, and then you're coming alongside somebody who's in that moment right now, they can relate to you. They don't feel like you're just pacifying them. They don't feel like you're just giving them your textbook answer because maybe you went to school and learned some fancy terms or whatever. Or you're giving me the generic, just keep fighting and just pray on it and everything's going to be okay.
Right.
They can feel your sincerity, your
Right.
authenticity. And that's why God has to allow us to go through our respective journeys, because what it does is it builds up our spiritual core, our spiritual muscle, our spiritual endurance, and it allows us to be able to impact at the highest of levels, so that when we serve in the spirit of our gifts and our talents, we're able to do so in excellence. You're able to do it in excellence, and it almost comes off effortless because you're doing it from the heart. It's just a natural part of you trying to pour into somebody else that may be broken. You're trying to help them see that there is that light at the end of the tunnel, that there is hope, that you don't have to stay stuck here. Don't feel like that just because you're going through that storm right now that that's the end, because it's not. It's just a part of the journey. It's just a part of the process. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that that's so valuable of a story that you shared, and that's why I'm spending the time I am to just let our audience know that don't take this lightly. This is just all of the pieces, the what we call the good parts, and even the not so feel good parts. It was all a part of that process. And even to that, one of the things that I've been really trying to work on and sharing with others is that we have to steer away from even calling it bad and rough times. It's an opportunity.
Right.
These are just simply opportunities for us to be better versions of ourselves, opportunities for us to grow and develop. That's all challenging times are. It's an opportunity. It's not a time for us to just get into our feelings to the degree to where we get stuck. Do you have a right to have the feelings? Absolutely, because you're still human. So, you need to cry, cry. You need to punch a wall, punch a wall. You need to yell out, yell out. But once you get that out of you, and now you open yourself up and say help, and you're asking the help from the right person. In this case, you sought out God to ask for that help, and who better? Then now He's like, okay, I've been waiting. Let's get to work. And that's exactly what He's been building on and building on with you, and He's going to continue to build on that. I'm confident that you're just still scratching the surface. You're not done yet.
Literally.
So powerful. Thank you for sharing that. So when we talk about our challenges, again, whether they're big stuff like what you just shared, or even if it's just the minor, everyday type of annoyances that we can run into, I'm curious to know from you, when you find yourself up against a challenging time, a situation, or what have you, what is your routine, your regimen that you like to follow that seems to work for you in terms of keeping that level head and focus, if you will, while you're trying to deal with whatever it is that's in front of you right now that you're having to address?
So let me preface this by telling you that this took years to get to where I am now. Because again, not only was I a hot mess express, I was also I was also a hothead. So I had an answer for everything, and I had a pretty slick mouth to go with it.
No.
So with that being said, when I decided to really start, downloading and listening to what God had to say, and actually taking into account, okay, this is the direction that I believe my life should be heading, with always consulting Him, I would go ahead and I would say I would start journaling.
Hmm.
That was my first thing, because I couldn't afford a therapist, and journaling was just my outlet,
Mm-hmm.
right? Eventually, and I still have journals to this day from back then. They're pretty painful to read sometimes if you really want to go back and read them, but I don't. So, um, I started journaling, and I would just journal every day, just anything, no set amount of time, no, just whatever my day was, just however I felt, just anything. That was the beginning of me. I realize now, putting my thoughts on paper
Mm-hmm.
and basically pouring out instead of keeping in.
Yes.
Eventually, when I started to go ahead and I started to actually work, and had a decent job, then I started to go ahead and I started to use the employee assistance program, which most companies offer.
Yes, they
I
do.
started, yep, I went ahead and I started using this employee, because I found myself very angry with a lot of things that were happening. And I didn't know how to resolve this anger. And sometimes when you write things on paper, just because you write it, it's not enough. Sometimes you got to say it. And you need someone logical to come back and say to you, well, could it be this? Well, what about this? Because sometimes we're just so stuck in this little perspective, when there's like a broad, spectrum of a perspective that we
Mm-hmm.
didn't even think about, because we're just stuck here. So eventually I started to go ahead and I started to see a therapist. The therapist was great. I found one. She was amazing. Thank goodness for her. I saw her for a couple of years, and then and then along the way of seeing her, I started to, I guess, include coping techniques, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
where I take a step back before answering, before saying anything, and I just really think about it, right? I really think, all of the possibilities, all of the scenarios, everything that goes with it. Again, this is not something that I did overnight. This took years to do. And even sometimes now I still struggle with it, because my automatic reaction is to say something or to, be 2013 Kim. But, you know, 2023 Kim is a different Kim. So I go ahead and I take a step back, I breathe, I, talk to myself. I really just kind of plot it out in my head. Um, just all the answers, and just, I guess, an internal conversation, an internal dialogue. Self-awareness, I found, has got to be one of the best things that I discovered along the way, because self-awareness really gives you that 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 awareness that you need to not jump and to make decisions and to fly off the handle and to, do crazy things. So I discovered that along the way, and so now I'm pretty mellow, and it takes a lot to move me. But, occasionally I have those days, but it does take a lot to move me. So for the most part, just really getting self-aware, journaling, using therapy. If you meditate. I'm recently started incorporating meditation. But anything that you can get your hands on, just to really sit with your thoughts and process them.
Love that. Love that. Pretty much because you have a very broad mixture of different things that you've done, and I think it starts with that self awareness. You said, "Hey, I get a little hot headed at times," and so I learned how to step back. I learned how to breathe. I learned how to get it out on paper, and even I love that you focused on the realization that you have to let that stuff out, and so the therapist was able to help you to transition it from just putting it on paper, but just speaking it out, getting it out your system, purging yourself of that. Because I think when we hold in that bitterness, that anger, that frustration, and we don't have an outlet to let it go, it's only harming us. It's just, like I said, it's like walking around with poison inside of you, thinking that somehow you're going to feel better just by keeping it there. And so tapping into EAP, like I said, we have that at my company as well. And and the therapy, I tried therapy myself for the first time last year, and I used to be one of those people who was a naysayer to that. That's for crazy people, that kind of stuff. But as you said, you'd be surprised if you've never experienced therapy and you've been having some kind of feeling about it or been on the fence about it. It's definitely worth you trying, because you've now allowed a person who is of a neutral stance, non-judgmental, where you can just be yourself and pouring out, and then they can give you practical ways to process what you just said, and as you said, coping mechanisms that will help you to just work through those things, healthy coping mechanisms, versus you trying to cope on your own and maybe doing things that are detrimental and harmful to you. They can guide you to more, again, more healthy, more practical choices that will be more of a building you back up to where you need to be, versus tearing you down even further when you're already dealing with a whole bunch of, hardcore, difficult times, if you will. So I love that. I'm a talker to myself as well. Call me crazy. I do it when I'm especially in the morning, when I'm, walking the dog. I'm talking to God. I'm talking to myself. Just it's refreshing. It's relaxing. Even if I'm in the car, driving, it's not unusual for me to turn the radio off or turn it down, and I'm just talking it out. And what I've discovered, especially in my Christian walk, a lot of times I'm talking it out, talking to God, and while I'm talking to Him about something that's on my mind, I've had moments where in the midst of talking to Him, I talk out the answer to my own question. And I'm like, before I realize, I'm like, wait a minute, I just answered my own question.
Yep.
But again, it's that divine dropping it into you, because sometimes talking it through leads you to where you were trying to get to. So just when I thought I had a question for him, be like, well, you already had the answer. You just needed to talk it out, talk it through, but you have to have a clear mind, a clear head to do that. So,
Yes.
And you got to be open to receiving, because sometimes even when we go to God, sometimes we're really good, and some of us are really good at praying that strong, good prayer and telling Him everything that we need and want. But what we miss is that moment of the process where you're just supposed to sit back and wait for the answer. We just want to tell Him, okay, Lord, I need this, please, Lord, in Jesus' name, amen. And then we just walk away. He was like, don't you want the answer? Would you like to know where to go? You just giving me your list of to-do things that you want me to, like I'm supposed to be like a genie in a lamp or Santa Claus. I'm just supposed to make it happen because you told me you need this done, and then you just walk away. Well,
Right.
you might want to pause for a moment and let me respond. So again, whether I'm responding in prayer, whether I'm responding because you're in my word and you're reading it and you're looking for the answers there, whatever that is. So again, I love your process, and I think it's I'm pretty sure it's been beneficial for you, as well as somebody that's listening right now. They don't have a process, and so that's one of the reasons why I asked that question, because every time that I've asked that question, I've never heard the same answer twice. Everybody has their own kind of unique way of doing things. In some cases, been some very creative and unique things. I'm like, I might have to steal that. I might add that to my little repertoire. I never thought about that and being something that I can incorporate to help me, again, keep a level head, keep my focus as I'm dealing with challenging in those difficult moments. Because the reality is, it's not a matter of if, but when. You're not going to avoid storms. You're not going to avoid valley experiences. They're going to come. The point is, am I going to be prepared when they do come? Am I going to be able to withstand the hit when they do come? Or am I going to let a big or small situation hit me, and then it just takes me out? I'm just floored because I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared. And there's a way for you to prepare, and you should prepare. You don't wait until the storm gets here and then start preparing. What you spoke of, these are things that you're making a part of your daily normal life. So if today just happens to be a day that's problem free, great. But if tomorrow there's a tornado hitting you, that's okay too, because you're ready. You stay ready. So that's
Stay ready, so you don't got to get ready.
There you go. So I love that. So Kim, if you had the opportunity to pour into it, and I'm gonna just use what you said just a few moments ago, if 2023 Kim had a chance to pull 2013 Kim to the side and share with her, some wisdom, some nuggets of information that you think would have helped the 2013 version be able to navigate and handle the challenges and adversities of life, to have a clearer perspective of things. Or perhaps somebody that's listening that they're like the 2013 version of you, what would be the words of wisdom that you would offer up that you believe would have been a game changer in helping them to help them be able to do a better job at dealing with the adversity and challenging moments?
Two things I would say. One would be to seek God sooner. So I was seeking Him, and it wasn't until that one time that I was like, oh no, this is not it, right? And when I was really like fed up, my breaking point. If I was listening before and just really taking Him in before, right? I'm not saying I would have avoided any issues. I'm sure I would have had issues, but I probably would have went ahead and I probably would have avoided. I probably would, my the impact of my hot mess wouldn't have been as drastic as it was, right? So that's one part of it. The other part of it would also be to develop in emotional intelligence a lot sooner. Develop some emotional intelligence a lot sooner. It helps you with your. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say for those who may not be completely familiar with your explanation of emotional intelligence, kind of explain that to those who need clarity on what you mean by it. I know what you mean, but
Yeah.
share that with them.
So emotional intelligence would be going ahead and being able to logically think of things, logically work through things without blowing up or exploding or anything to that effect. It's being the self-aware that I
Hmm.
mentioned earlier. It is it is coming to grips with who you are as an individual and going ahead because we can't change who you are, right? But who you are as an individual and then letting the world know who you are and embracing that, right? I think a big part of me when I was younger didn't embrace who I was wholeheartedly. There was a mask that I hid. There was a lot of things that I went ahead and I shied away from just for the sake of, Jamaican culture. And for the most part, it's like, oh, well, if I would have just embraced this who I was, now I'm embracing me 1,010%. And everybody's like, oh my God, you're so great. And it's the connections and the relationship with people are so much more authentic, right? So
Hmm.
I feel like that's a big part of it as well. So those would be my two big things. I'm sure I got tons. I'm sure I do, but off the top of my head, that would be it. Oh, but probably to keep pushing as well because all those trying times that I went through, just to your point that you mentioned earlier, they literally led up to where I am now, where I am working with women, teaching women how to be resilient, and in some cases, how to avoid resilience fatigue, right? Because
Mm.
who all said we want to go ahead and we always want to be the strong one? Nobody
Yes.
says that, okay? Nobody says that, and we don't always want to do it. So it works both ways that I work with women for that. So I think just keep pushing through, but know your boundaries and pace yourself as well.
Awesome, awesome. And I want to actually tap in on that because that's a very common conversation. I know, particularly more so lately than ever, about this whole, and it's really a self title, if you will, of the strong woman,
Mm-hmm.
the independent woman, you know, I can do bad all by myself woman, I got it all under control
Mm-hmm.
woman. That's like a thing that you know society has put out there that women are to embrace and embody, and you see that happen so much nowadays. And as you said, when you're pouring into women, you're saying you're bringing up the point that we don't always, that sounds good, but we're not always trying to be the strong woman. And it doesn't mean that you want to be the weak woman. It's
Right.
just that if you're putting this pressure on me that I always have to be strong, then it's almost like, and you tell me, please correct me if I'm wrong, it's almost like you're saying that while you're pushing me to be strong in everything, or if I'm pushing myself to be strong in everything, then what I'm on the opposite end doing is I'm denying myself the opportunity to not be okay, to maybe not feel strong today, and and
Right.
and 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 accepting that that's okay.
Right.
Even with men, we run into that problem of many of us growing up in households where you're told, men don't cry, men don't, show emotion because you're a man, you're supposed to be tough and all of that. Well, that doesn't mean that men don't ever go through stuff. So, but if you put that in my mind, in my spirit, that I can't express feelings, I can't hurt, I can't feel pain, then where does that go?
Right.
It just locks up inside of me. And then if I do let it out, depending upon what state of mind I'm in, if I've let it resonate too long, then I might be unleashing it, unjustly and inappropriately towards others, whether it's that woman in my life or the children in my life or somebody else that's around me that didn't deserve that, but because I've been holding it in so long. So I'm just curious, saying all that to say, I'm just curious, like, how do you, because I'm sure there's some women who might receive that right away and be like, yeah, sister, I get what you're saying. We don't always want to be strong. And then there's some that might be resistant to it. Like, I'm a single mom, I'm out here on my own. What you mean I can't be strong? Why is that a bad thing? How do you I'm just curious, like, how does that conversation flow for you where you're getting that message across to the women that you're seeking to empower and encourage?
So usually what happens is that a lot of times when I go ahead and when I meet women, and we start having conversations, it's usually I don't always want to be the strong woman. That's usually what happens. I will tell you about 98% of the time they will tell you I don't want to be a strong woman. I've had maybe one or two women that have said exactly what you said. And to be very honest with you, that's exactly how I was. Life didn't give me a choice. I'm a single mom of 3 kids. Who else was going to do it? Who else was going to get all this other stuff done? But the minute I started embracing the fact that I don't have to be that person, I don't have to be the strong person. I'm not saying don't get the stuff done. Get it done. Who else is going to do it? But the minute I started embracing the fact that I don't have to go ahead and I don't have to be this overpowering, fist raised, woman that's just taking over everything and, very aggressive. I don't have to be like that. There is something beautiful in femininity and still being strong. There's something to be said about that. The confidence that exudes behind that. It's next level. So for me, like I said, those women, I'm not telling you not to be, because who else is going to do it? But what I am saying is we also get to embrace the fact that we don't have to have our fists raised, and we don't have to go ahead and feel like we're taking over the world and we're fighting the world. We don't.
I love that. I love that. And again, I think just in those few comments that you just made, there's some ladies that are going to listen to this podcast episode, and you just blessed them in explaining that. And that's not me as a man speaking that from a, you tell them that they don't have to be the strong. The way you put it, it's like, I want you to be, you got responsibilities. Especially if you're by yourself trying to do it all on your, you gotta survive. You gotta do what you gotta do, but it's still okay to, like I said, to embrace your femininity. It's still okay to, I guess, to channel that strong, mentality into other. Have strong confidence in yourself.
Correct.
Have strong belief in yourself. Have strong values about yourself. Correct. Be strong in the sense that even if you're on your own, let's just say like yourself, single mom, raising kids, be strong in yourself in the fact that you don't settle for less just because you're by yourself and it would be convenient to have somebody be on board with you, so you take low just so you can say I'm not alone, or that you, or perhaps you may be in reverse. You stay in a situation that's clearly not healthy for you. It's toxic, but you feel like I'm just have to tough it out. Because it's better to, at least I know what I got. So I'm going to just tough this thing out, even though it's not healthy for me. It's toxic for me. It's toxic for my kids. It's toxic for my mindset and my emotion and my spiritual, maybe in some instances, God forbid, toxic for me physically because somebody's going upside my head or something. And I'm taking that when I don't have to, so I love the full circle approach that you bring to that. And again, the same message can be made to, and I've had these conversations even in person and even on the podcast. I've had men on board where we've had similar conversations, but from the male perspective of growing up thinking that you always got to be tough. You can't never, again, what did we talk about earlier? I can't never ask for help, because if I ask for help, that means I'm being weak. That means I'm being a punk. That means I'm being soft. That means, no, you're being human. Everybody needs somebody's help sometimes in some situation. I don't care who you are. I don't care how smart you are, how much money you got, what your titles are, what your educational levels are. Everybody needs something sometimes from somebody. We all have those moments of want that we don't have the answers to. We don't have the know-how. We need that community of somebody that we can rely upon, that we can lean into. So that's why I wanted to kind of I'm tagging on this a little bit more, because your perspective from woman to woman, and then just reemphasizing on my end, men to men, because we do the same thing,
Right.
and we need to kind of get off of that, because that's the problem, especially when it comes to our relationship with God, is that you know quit trying to be we're trying to be God. Quit trying to do everything on your own. Trying to I'm independent. I can just handle whatever. Okay, I appreciate your initiative. I appreciate your fortitude to want to step up. But you can't do everything, and so
Correct.
get off of that and lean into the one who can.
Right.
So
I will also add on to that and say, when you start thinking like that, because that, again, that was me for quite a few years. When you start thinking like that, I could do it all, whatever else the case may be, you are not necessarily leaning into God and what He has for you. You are leaning on your own understanding, and we know from Scripture it tells us, you know, do not lean on your own understanding. And next thing before you know it, you're somewhere way down the line that you're not even supposed to be, right?
mm-hmm.
He had this for you. You went left.
Right.
You made a wrong turn at Albuquerque, as the cartoons used to say, right? Like you went somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the most part, it's so important to go ahead and to tap into what He has for you. Okay, tap into that conversation, and not just be so focused on yourself so inwardly.
I agree. I mean, just kind of to wrap up what you're saying, is like our greatest strength is really in our willingness to be obedient and
Hmm.
trusting God's direction, knowing that God is one of those people who He's not going to tell us all the details. He's just going to give us just enough that we need to, as we talked about earlier, take action. And so you have the choice. Am I going to take action even though I don't know all the particulars and all the details? Am I going to trust? Or am I going to let my fear and my anxiety and all of those things consume me to where I'd rather, I'm going to do it myself because at least I know what I'm doing, if I'm directing it. Okay. Well, how's that been working for you up to this point?
Right.
And what makes you think that if you keep on doing it, something's going to change? They have a word for that, and they call it insanity. When we repeat the same thing over and over again, expecting a different response, and 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 you've not modified, you've not adjusted, you've not tweaked anything. I'm just going to keep doing it, and eventually it's just going to. No, that's not how that works. So that's where you show your greatest strength, is when you're willing to be vulnerable, when you're willing to surrender, as long as you're be vulnerable and surrender to the right source. You can't just be vulnerable and surrender to anything and anybody, but if it's the right source, and in this case I'm speaking of leaning into God as that source, you got no fear, you got no need to worry, because the last time I checked, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, his record is undefeated. He's
Correct.
he, you know I don't recall a mistake on his record, a error, a foul called, a penalty. I don't recall any of that.
Right.
He's pretty, from my understanding, he's flawless. So if I just know that who's running the show, that should be enough for me. But that's
Hmm.
where our challenge comes in, because we like, especially in these days and times, we want to know all the particulars, all the detail. And if I don't see it, if I can't figure it out on my own, if it's not right in my face and spelled out, then I don't know about that. I don't want to, no, I got it. Do you?
Right.
So, and that's when he'll
He
let
has
us.
that work in him.
Sometimes he'll be like, okay, you got it. Okay,
Right.
I'll be here. Go ahead and do whatever you think you got.
Right.
And when you're done, come see me.
Right.
you know. So, awesome, awesome. So, Kim, before I let you go, I do, of course, want to have an opportunity to celebrate you, to acknowledge you, to love on you, to just applaud you for whatever it is that you got going on and that you're doing. So, if you would, please share with us tell us what exciting adventures, activities, plans. What's in the works for Kim right now that we need to be knowing about and connecting with and being a part of? Come on, just put it out. It's time to
Yeah.
brag and love on you. So tell us all about it.
Yes, yes. Okay, so first, my first celebration is the other day I realized I went to Greece. Yes, I went to Greece. Let's talk about how I never thought I would ever get there. not get there, but never thought I
Wow.
would be in a position that I could ever afford to even go. I didn't even think it was something that was even on my list. I didn't think that, you know how you'd be like, God, that's for me? Well, that was for me.
Uh
So let
huh.
me just say, and it's not to brag or anything, it's more like, look where I'm coming from, look where I am. The life that I was living then, or the life that I live now, is the life that I prayed for. That's
Mm.
that's that's where my point. The life I live now, it's I'm better than where I was, right? I know there's still more, but the life I live now, I'm beyond grateful, and I'm just ecstatic for because there's more to come, right? So that's one. The
Mm-hmm.
other part of it now is that in for Black Friday, I actually do have something coming up where I am going ahead and I have created a workbook for women. It's called Resilience and Flourishing. Right? We're going to go ahead and we're going to learn to be resilient in some cases for some women, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to learn how to flourish in that process as well. Let's learn how to pace ourselves. Let's learn how to take care of ourselves in there because we don't want to be resilient and overly resilient, right? And develop resilience fatigue. We want to be resilient and flourishing. So that is something that is coming up for Black Friday. And the following year, early 2024, there is a seminar that I am working on to go ahead and to do in person in South Florida. And so I'm super excited about that. Details to come on that as well.
Awesome, awesome. So, if anybody wants to connect with you, whether it's speaking opportunities, workshops, or anything of that like, products and services that you may have, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, so you would email me at contact at Kimberly F is in Frank Young.com. My social Instagram, best place to find me, it is I am Kimberly F Young. And that's it. Same for Facebook as well.
Awesome. Okay, okay. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Kim has put it all out there for you. She's got some exciting things now and in the works. So she's definitely somebody that you want to keep your eye on and connect with because, as you can see, she has a heart of service, and she's really, again, as I started at the top of the show, she's passionate about helping, specifically coming alongside and empowering women. She has, you, as you heard, she has a phenomenal story, and you saw how she's allowed God to navigate what started out as a valley experience, but turned into a blessing, a beyond blessing, and she's still on the mission, still on the rise. That journey is still continuing, but you can see the growth, you can see the development, you can see the gains that have been made.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as long as she remains open, which I'm confident that she will, to God's direction and His will for her life, you're going to see a whole lot more of that very thing. But guess what? It's not just reserved specifically for Kim. It's not just reserved specifically for me. You have an opportunity to experience it as well. And so please take heed to all that we've shared today, the stories, the journey, the opening up, the authenticity, the vulnerability here. This was purposeful. This was intentional so that you can connect and understand that, again, we go through what we go through, but it doesn't mean that it's the end for us. There's always an opportunity, and that's the key word. It's an opportunity for you to build and to develop and to grow from those moments in time to get to living in your purpose, living in your calling, and allowing God to use you in a magnificent and mighty way. So, again, Kim, I thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us and just blessing us with everything that you shared. Please know you have an open invitation anytime to come back to talk some more because, again, we could have easily kept talking for hours and hours on a number of different subject matters. So I will be honest, I am still trying to figure out this hot mess version of you, this
Ooh.
feisty popping off and all that. I'm just because all my encounters with you, you're just so tender. It's just like, oh, and I'm like, where's this feisty, Kim at? I was
It
like,
was there.
wow, she used to exist. I was like, whoa, okay. So that's why you got to say that. Watch out for the quiet ones. Those are the ones that surprise you. You think I was okay. You go,
Right.
okay, mess with me if you want to. Don't let me bring out 2013 version
That's
on you.
right.
So
That's right.
but that's cool though. I'm glad that God has transformed you in a way that you're a little bit calm. But
Yes,
but
still
he
working
didn't
on
he
me.
didn't take all that fight away from you. If you
No.
need to let somebody know, I'm sure you can let them know.
Yes.
That you got time today. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes. That's exactly
so
accurate.
I'm gonna stop picking with you.
I thank God for what He's doing in my life.
She said, "You mess with me, I got time. I
Right.
got time." So So again, audience, thank you so much for being with us today. And if you've enjoyed the content and the conversation that we've had today, please subscribe, please share, please comment, please like. Because again, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is what it's all about: encouraging, empowering, and uplifting through our stories and through our journey. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and just remember, at the Blessings in the Street podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and where your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, God bless. Take care of yourselves. Just fight that good fight, and appreciate and embrace the journey that goes along with it, because God doesn't allow those things to come our way just by accident, just by chance, or to harm you in any way. It's an opportunity for you to grow and develop and build a closer relationship with Him. And I promise you, when you do that, it'll be the best decision that you ever made. So with that said, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.